Good evening, everybody. Juan Fernandez here with breaking news. A pursuit of burglary suspects. SkyCal is up above, and our Mike Rogers on the desk following the very latest on this. Mike, looks like they're getting off the freeway. Maybe. What's going on here?
Yeah, so we're southbound the 110 freeway. Desmond is back with us. He's overhead in SkyCal. This is the issue with the Bravo airspace. So we're not going to be able to follow it any further south. At some point, we'll have to make a decision and go around the freeway just as he gets off at Gage. These are suspects that are thought to be armed and dangerous burglary suspects at LA Impact, which is a regional crime suppression task force, had been after. This was following in the San Fernando Valley as we go now eastbound here off of the 110 freeway. This had been a following in the San Fernando Valley. They'd been chasing several of these cars. There had been like at least 2 or 3 different cars involved in this. LA Impact had been surveilling them. They, in fact, still have a surveillance helicopter that is overhead, or a surveillance airship overhead, that has been trying to keep track of these guys. LAPD is part of this. CHP is a part of this. There may actually be 2 separate chases going on right now. One with the one we're looking at, and a separate one going down the 110 freeway where those we saw those police cars going. So the issue we're having right now, though, is we are in that very sensitive LAX airspace. So we're trying to watch them as this guy moves eastbound through the area here. But there he is right there. He has been going very fast. Now, I'm going to bring Des in because, Des, as I mentioned, we've been hearing a bunch of different types of cars that were involved in this. The most recent one that we believe we were following was a Chevy Malibu. Does this look like a Malibu to you? It kind of does, right?
Yeah, it does look like a Chevy Malibu, but we've been hearing a lot of chatter back and forth with the LAPD's helicopters overhead, and they have several helicopters that are overhead this right now. And we know that there were multiple cars involved at an earlier juncture, and the suspects got out and ran. Some of them may have gotten inside of this vehicle. They've been saying that they do have 2 people in custody, and they recovered a gun from that other vehicle that was involved. But there could still be another weapon in this vehicle in play, and it's not clear how many people are inside of that silver Malibu here. Obviously, really difficult for us to try to track this here, as we're just kind of trying to parallel the pursuit. We have to go all the way to Alameda before we can make any kind of southbound turn. They're not even letting LAPD into the LAX airspace right now, just to kind of give you an idea of how sensitive the airspace has become. So give us a second to try to reacquire this vehicle here, and we'll get right back with you.
Well, Mike, you mentioned the San Fernando Valley. You mentioned these are burglary suspects. So could this be part of the team of burglars that we've covered in the past that go into the San Fernando Valley and hit the homes? For sure. And we're actually listening right now. They have gotten out and they're on foot now, Juan. So that's why Des was not able to see them. They're on East 62nd Street. 400 block of East 62nd Street is where they bailed out. So Des is going to look for that right now. This is that issue we've been having where we used to be able to at least get into the airspace under certain circumstances. Now the FAA has forbidden us from being in it at all. LAPD is not even being allowed in the airspace. There is a surveillance helicopter that has been up. They're up at like 7,500 feet, so they're okay. But I can tell you where they were looking earlier, Juan, was the hills above Tarzana. So just south of the 101 freeway, south of Ventura Boulevard, up there. That is where the surveillance helicopter had been doing circles and kind of surveilling them. There were several suspects. We got into a following here, and we got down from the 101 and then down and further into this area. Now, what we need to figure out and what we're working on here is to see if there is still that second set of this that is happening, or if this is just the only thing. So there had been, as Desmond mentioned, 2 suspects had already been taken into custody. There have been 2 crashes. Right side of your screen is video from right before we came on the air here, southbound on the 110 freeway. So there has been just a lot going on. What makes it harder, Juan, is this is LA Impact. LA Impact is a regional crime suppression task force with officers from a ton of different departments that is headed up by the California Department of Justice. So it's difficult for us to get information out of them, especially during an active incident. We also can't hear them on any of our radios. So that's what makes the information a bit challenging here. And of course, now to add to the top of that, we're dealing with 2 separate airspace issues, the Dodgers flight restrictions, as well as LAX's Bravo airspace that we're not being allowed into. So Des is trying to find the termination of this, where we know is the 400 block of East 62nd Street, where the suspects got out and ran on foot. They were described as 3 men wearing all black. So we'll wait to see if LAPD is going to be able to take them into custody. Hopefully that is happening soon. But again, everything's just kind of complicated by all of the airspace issues. You know, what makes this yet again very interesting, Mike, is that the officers were surveilling the San Fernando Valley. So they were looking for these teams of burglars. They kind of fell out of the news cycle for a little bit, but here we are again. 3 men dressed in black, 2 separate pursuits, burglaries, San Fernando Valley. Could they be at work again?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, especially if LA Impact is getting involved, LA Impact does really do some good, deep investigative work. And again, they're funded by they're headed up by the California Department of Justice. So they do a lot of really good work here to try to get these guys. And this is sometimes how it happens. A lot of times LA Impact does this work and they're able to make these traffic stops. And these people do stop when they're supposed to and it doesn't turn into a pursuit. But every now and again, we do get these pursuits with LA Impact. And that's what gets a little bit tricky, right? Is they got to bring in a ton of different agencies to try to make this happen. And in this case, you've had one LAPD airship that has been talking on the CHP frequency. They've been talking on North Hollywood's frequency, West Valley's frequency, a lot of different kind of things at play here to try to get this handled and dealt with. And it looks like they've gotten at least 2 suspects into custody. And then obviously we're waiting to see what the status is of the remaining suspects. And it looks like, I can't tell if that's the end of it or if that's just construction work. It looks like just construction
work. Yeah. Mike, when you mentioned the Impact team and you're having even trouble listening to them on the police scanners, how are we getting information then that this pursuit is stopped? There's people in custody. Is that a separate frequency?
It is, yeah, because when CHP and LAPD got involved, we're able to hear it on their frequencies.
On their frequency.
So they're not even really able to switch over to Impact's frequencies. They're just kind of trying to relay information from the helicopters and all of the other things that are available. Impact stands for Interagency Metropolitan Police Apprehension Crime Task Force. And it's a part, again, it's a statewide or a region-wide area or agency here in Los Angeles that comprises a lot of different law enforcement here in the Southern California region.
Well, Mike, the good news is here 2 burglary teams may be off the streets tonight, apprehended by this Impact team. We're going to keep monitoring this breaking news story. Desmond will hopefully get to the termination point. We're going to bring you the very latest coming up on CBS LA at 8 on KCAL 9.